Hi there, and welcome to Ray Muzzle Geekery for the week of January 20th, 2020, episode 37. I'm Dusty Red, and with me as always,
I'm Dusty White.
And let's get into this week's news.
Local to us, Evanston native Sean Evans goes big time network True TV has signed the First We Feast star to host Hot Ones, the game show, where two teams of two face 3 rounds, banking as much cash as they can to compete for the grand prize. Contestants will be quizzed on pop culture trivia while chowing down on ever-increasingly hotter wings. The team with the most cash moves on to the finale, the Ring of Fire, where they will need to work together to solve a password game. If the teammates fight through the pain and guess 5, yes, that's 5, correct passwords in 90 seconds, they will win $25,000 in cash. So, would this be a worthy charity event at the next con?
And it burns, the Ring of Fire. I mean, I've debated on doing something like that, of doing some sort of hot wing BS style thing. The problem with doing it at a convention,
right,
is you're going to ruin somebody's convention.
At least for the digestive period of whatever that might be for the person.
Could be a day. Like, that is 24 hours of not fun that you're wishing upon somebody. Now, that said, that better fetch for a nice charity price. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, first and foremost, congratulations to Sean Evans.
Right.
Like, it's pretty awesome that he took a crazy idea, or at least they took a crazy idea, and let's put the bomb on some wings and tell stories and such. I think it's indicative to his and his team's ability as interviewers.
Well, I was just going to say, to kind of harken back to the original topic of us doing it for a charity con, is I'm just saying Gray Muzzle versus the Draggett show.
Whoa!
Anyway, but I feel like the two of us watch Hot Ones for different reasons. You kind of watch it to watch people get in pain and do the da-bomb and be like completely blown away by hot sauce. I, on the other hand, really do like watching Sean Evans be in his element and answer or ask some really good questions.
I mean, I'm with you on that 100%. Like, yeah, I do. Like, I'm a glutton for punishment. I like watching other people suffer. It's kind of my, like, it's why I try to get married so often. I enjoy watching people who suffer. No. I do like that aspect of the show of, it's not so much watching people suffer. I like the fact that he asks questions immediately after eating some stuff that, to normal people. Like, we have some friends that could be like, bah, give me the hot stuff and I'm good.
Right.
Like, I can think of one person now that's a really close friend and a Patreon of ours. But my sister's also the same way. Like, she'll eat hot stuff as well. I think it's interesting to see people's responses where they eat this hot thing, their body's reacting, they're sweating, they're hot, whatever their reaction is. It
throws them for a loop, for sure.
And then they're immediately
bombarded with,
asked a question. Hey, in 1922, you did this, or you saw
1922?
this. 1922?
Really? I would love to see the interview question that's given to somebody that was born in 1922.
Jeff Goldblum, maybe?
Oh.
Stay tuned. So, I mean, but you have these questions that are like, hey, this happened, and they're not just like frivolous questions. And I think that goes into what you were saying. They're not throwaway questions. They're not like random questions. How often have we watched this show and the guest was like, you've really done your research.
Right. It does the deep dive for sure.
So it's good to see, it's good to see Sean Evans have a show and continue on this crazy idea of, we're going to eat some hot stuff, we're going to answer some questions and have fun with it.
I'm kind of interested to see the aspect of the everyman be on this game show, because I mean, Hot Ones is definitely for celebrities of some way, shape, or form. Somebody that's got something to sell you or show you or whatever.
Well, what's going to be the vetting process?
And that's interesting for me to see. For it's being shown on something called True TV, which I know from back in the day when it was more like court TV and crime drama or crime documentaries and things like that. So it's interesting to see the network that bought it. It's interesting to see what Sean has branched out for his product or his brand name, I guess. And then again, to see more everyday individuals be like, yeah, give me some hot wings. I can go to B-dubs and do the atomic challenge or whatever.
And that's the thing. It's one thing to
have to answer questions is what group dynamic or what group duo comes out on top on that. You're going to have your Ken Jennings that could answer Jeopardy questions, but Ken Jennings handle some da bomb while trying to answer those questions. I'm just saying it's interesting to see what will happen.
I think there's going to be a lot of hand waving behind the scenes for that, for sure. Probably. I think there's going to be a lot of, you don't want the guy that could take spices and is intelligent and just be like, yeah, this is easy, this is a cakewalk. That's not good TV.
No, you want to see people get teary-eyed.
I'm 19 and I graduated from Harvard, and the spiciest thing I ever ate was ketchup. Like, you are hired.
Yeah, so exactly.
That's what
you are
they want.
in.
So it'll be good to see, but maybe it takes away. Like, I was as excited as I am that he's getting his payday, because I really do like him. Maybe it takes away from his brand or takes away from Hot Ones, because it is an interview show. It is putting celebrities in a position. I kind of could care less what Steve the barber reacts to hot wings compared to Bill Burr sweating his ginger bald ass off.
I think it is a good move, because later in the article that I read is they are pairing it. It's going to be a half hour or an hour pairing where they're showing the Hot One game show with an episode of Hot Ones. So you're taking something like a YouTube star and a YouTube show and now packaging it in a way where it can be on mainstream television and be interesting.
So do we need to, maybe we'll get comments on this one. I'm very curious. Is this a breakthrough? How many other YouTube stars have done this? Have gone into TV stardom like this?
Or signed a contract. And it's only, I think from what I read originally, it's only a 20-show contract. So these 20 game show episodes will be paired with 20 specific Hot One episodes. You're can't talk. You are making your audience more well-known. You're expanding your audience. And then what else are you bringing in from it? So it's interesting to see. So maybe that is something that comes from...
Oh, but if you're broadening your audience, what are you getting from True TV? That's the question. Like, how many housewives, I guess? Or who watches True TV, honestly? What's the demographic on that? So it's an interesting move.
Yeah,
we'll have to come back to that one. That's yeah. All right. So what do you get, Dusty White?
Okay.
When you cross a dinosaur, a cowboy, a tiger, and an abusive boyfriend together? Well, at FurCon in San Jose, California, you get headlines about furries coming to the rescue of a woman who was being attacked by her boyfriend in a car. So you see, according to witnesses, a vehicle pulled to the curb, and it appeared that a man was beating the female driver. Several convention attendees from the furry convention at FurCon rushed to the car to confirm the assault and immediately sprung into action, dragging the man out of the vehicle and restraining him until police arrived.
What?
You heard me. Furries saving the day. So I guess furries ruin everything.
But for the benefit?
I mean, yeah, it's...
Can you imagine the arraignment of that individual being caught up in the jail?
I want to see witnesses pulled to the stand, be in fursuit. I don't recognize this man. Oh, he's got his dinosaur head on. Got it. That's the guy that pulled me from the car.
Mr. Tiger, could you please identify in this court of law, after swearing in, who you witnessed that day beating the individual?
Well, my friend, the cowboy, and the dinosaur stepped in and dragged him. No, I mean, it's, in a way, it's kind of non-news, just because it's Good Samaritans in action. I guess if anything, it helps.
It's Good Samaritans in action with the flavor. With the flavor of fursuits.
And I guess it's good that we get that kind of publicity for once, because we're always getting the deviant thing, when in actuality they're people too. They witnessed something that went, hey, that's not right. There's probably a level of confidence that gets built up because you're in your community.
Right.
Like, I wonder if they were alone, like it was just the three of them walking on the street, if they would do something. I'm willing to bet they would. But to have a convention behind you, to be in that element of, I'm confident about myself, I'm confident about this. This is clearly something that is wrong and is happening in front of me. I am going to put a stop to this.
Do something about it.
I mean, kudos to these guys for stepping up and just being good citizens and good human beings, regardless of whatever animal and persona, whatever else you want to be or idolize, or just being good people and doing something about something so crappy. Like, good job.
Yeah. Speaking of furries, February 13th through February 16th in Brookfield, Wisconsin, come see Your Gray Muzzles open for the Dragget Show.
Dragget Show!
At FurSquared. We are going to be basically opening for them, doing our first live recording.
Yeah, it's a little
that's going to come with fun.
I am excited as a podcaster and entertainer and whatnot. We're fairly heavily queued, come to think of it. We have a panel on Friday afternoon at 1.
Yes.
For otherworldly stories, talking about our LARP stories, and I am specifically targeting you, Mr. Travis, and our hot box and punchy rock stories. But we'll be telling stories about LARP and role-playing games and whatnot, and the moments to take you out. We're doing that on Friday, and then on Saturday, I am actually going to be, apparently, I'm not confirmed yet, but it looks like I'll be doing charity D&D.
Which you always do a good job of.
Every
time it's enjoyable.
Phelan. It's 100% Phelan that comes up with these stories, these scenarios that allows the audience to participate by, hey, we're going to throw money at the charity, which is generally for puppies and kitties, because FurSquared benefits the Humane Animal Welfare Society of Milwaukee. So people throw money at them. Woo, Haas. They throw money at them, and then he's got a system developed to make things happen in the story. So, yeah, it's awesome that he's able to come around and come up with these ideas and come up with these scenarios to raise money and to get audience participation, as well as those on stage to act out and entertain and whatnot. Especially at 11 a.m. on a Saturday at a convention. Where the convention does not condone drinking in excess. But once convention hours are more or less over, I go to my room with my friends, and I may or may not consume in excess. Drink water, everyone. But yes, so it's exciting, and we'll be there for that. And then obviously we'll be opening up for the Dragget Show Saturday at 4 o'clock. And then they come on stage at 5:30, and then afterwards will be the big, sponsor dinner and stuff. But yeah, we'll be opening for Dragget Show. So shout out to Xander the Blue and Alkali the ferret, I guess. Xander the Blue and Alkali the not blue. Alkali the Blue? Alkali has blown. Wait. So anyway, yeah. If you are in the area or you want to come down and see some entertaining nonsense from your great muzzles, hey, we'll be happy to see you. So, they called him Captain for 178 episodes and 4 feature films. 18 years later, Jean-Luc Picard is back in Star Trek Picard, which has been released on CBS All Access on January 23rd. Taking place 18 years after the events of Star Trek Nemesis, the final film starring the crew of the Next Generation, with all the trailers pointing to Picard living in isolation on his family's vineyard. Some old faces return, stories unravel, and all in all, the show is being lauded with praise for its accessibility to new viewers like myself, who may or may not be terribly familiar with the ins and outs of Star Trek. Season 1 consists of 10 episodes, so, get comfy and enjoy the ride. However, What I found fascinating about this little bit of news that came out was that the show wasn't just coming out, but rather how and why it came about. In an interview with NPR, Stewart was actually uninterested in playing Picard again, as he felt it difficult playing a character who defended a utopian vision, while he himself was living in a real world that has taken a dystopian turn. The European Union has always made me feel, well, we are headed towards our own federation of planets somewhere down the line that will come about. And I am angry, disappointed, and embarrassed by our decision to leave the Union, Stewart said in an interview with Weekend Edition. However, with the producers telling Stewart that the Federation has swung towards an isolationist view, Stewart then said, "My interest was intensely sparked." What do you think, Dusty?
Wow. I am excited and hope that those thoughts and opinions are properly portrayed in the show.
And
it's one thing to agree with the Federation, and ultimately the goal of the Federation is to bring peace and things and do good.
Knowledge, do good. Do good things through space.
So it's, when you look at it in that regard of, that's a political standing.
Oh, 100%. And it's interesting that he goes that route because it is a politically touching situation, and it's almost interesting. And we haven't seen anything, so I don't know if we're going to accidentally spoil, so to speak. But it sounds like that they're going to push almost to what we're dealing with now, with a lot of separation, with a lot of extremist views, and a lot of political things that normally we avoid on Grey Muzzle Geekery. But, you know, you can only avoid it for so long before it becomes part of life. And it touches your life in a very real level of, this is a fandom, the Trekkies, that get to see this in a fantastical kind of way.
Right.
But now they're playing this role of something that they idolized, that the Federation is goodness in space, kind of unraveling and kind of becoming political and kind of coming to a point of a dystopian.
And I wonder how much of that is Trekkies growing up. Like, obviously, the original Star Trek was done in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. But some of, like, the next generation and some of the younger children or younger audience has grown up with this idea that ultimately the Federation happens. Or, like, go with me on this with here.
I do want to just make one point before you go too far. Don't discredit the original Star Trek, because even though it's easy for us to look at stuff, those fans still had to deal with their potentially dystopian stuff. You gotta remember, those fans also dealt with early 80s and 80s Cold War type situations.
True.
So as much as it's easy for us to look and go, oh yeah, we had a dystopian thing, and it makes it very real and gritty, there's still that romanticized view of the original Star Trek that you had those people who grew up in it, especially if you had younger, you're in your teens in the 70s, and you're catching reruns, or you're catching, last tail end of stuff, and then you hit your 20s, and then the 80s kick, and now you have a real threat of, the doomsday clock moving, closer and closer to midnight, which has just happened recently, by the way, Dusty White. It is now officially 100 seconds away from doomsday. But you have that kind of happening, so I agree with you. But don't discredit those people who also saw the original.
That's a good
and
point.
Grew up and saw the 80s.
I'm looking more on the lines of Picard, and that those youth are now growing up, and now they're old enough to be in politics and be a loud enough voice to be heard. And it's that Federation is just this. Okay, we saw it on television. This is something that obviously, clearly, everyone would have been okay with, and everyone would have been like on board with. And it's one of those things where now we're seeing with Brexit and obviously our own American politics, like for what they are, is no, the Federation would have had to fight hard for space to be the final frontier and the thing that you're spreading peace to something that we would have eventually had to, in theory, gone to war for here in
modern
Earth,
times, sure,
or on Earth.
It's when do ideals become politically advantageous, and that's what it seems like Picard is aiming. Again, we haven't seen an episode yet, and that is on my. And I did say in an earlier episode of Grey Muzzle Geekery that I do want to sit down for this, and the fact that critics and other like reviewers, so to speak, are lauding this to be accessible.
Right.
It's been 18 years, which is literally a generation
Yep.
of people. So you have, we'll just go, an 18-year-old watching this show for the first time, never saw Nemesis because it was, air quote, before his time, supposedly could get into this and has enough pop culture knowledge. Like, most people know, I'm willing to bet they may not know a lot about Captain Picard, but they know who
enough.
he is.
Yeah, exactly.
So you get those people like, oh yeah, the name sounds familiar. Let me see this. So I'm sure there's going to be flashbacks. Obviously, there's a so from what I read, there's 2 stories going on in the show, and you have to figure them out. One being the mysterious person that Picard needs to help, and then why Picard is on his little vineyard.
Mission. Or
It was in his vineyard. Why is he?
okay.
Why is he retired to a vineyard all on his own? Like, why is that a thing? So there's 2 stories that happens there, and I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with that and where that goes. So, I'm sure we'll report in the future about that because that is something I do want to sit down. If you could somehow manage to duct tape me to the couch and actually sit and watch the show to completion. BoJack's still on my list though, but maybe after BoJack I'll sit and focus on Picard.
Will the Quickie Mart end up with a new clerk? Might be time for that exact thing to happen. Now that both the voice actor, Hank Azaria, and the Simpson creators are on board with no longer having Azaria voice the Indian American character Apu after 30 years of the character having the same accent. This long time coming change was a result of a documentary from 2017 called The Problem with Apu, by a comedian, Hari, I'm going to butcher this, Konabolu, which basically summed up the issue with you can still love something and still be critical about certain aspects of it. Azaria goes on to add in the article by CNN, the idea that anybody, young or old, past or present, was bullied or teased based on the character of Apu really makes me sad. It was never his intention. However, we all agreed on it. We all feel like it's the right thing to do. Any favorite Simpson episodes or Simpson characters there, Red?
I mean, I am not... Oh, again, TV, I don't do that. It's a weird question to ask, to be honest with you. Like, favorite character?
I mean, or any memories. I have some memories from...
I mean, the Treehouse of Horrors is always a big thing for me.
Okay.
Before we get into that, let's get to the meat of
the article itself.
Because it is a very good topic of where you hear people complain. I mean, hey, this is probably the most political episode we've done so far now, but you hear people complain about, oh, I remember when we could say this or we could do that and do this, and it's like, it's 2020, guys. Like, we don't... I think...
it even harkens back to... and maybe you feel more passionately about this, but sports teams and
going Redskins. Yeah, I can feel the Redskin talk already.
I was just saying, I was like, it harkens back to sports teams turning around and being like, our mascots are culturally insensitive. And some teams do a really good job of trying to be respectful. And yes, this is our heritage. Yes, this is our culture. We are trying to be respectful of that culture. So they do change things.
Time out.
Or being completely ludicrous about it.
It's not their culture. I don't think there's a single tribe that owns any sports teams. So they can't claim that to be their culture.
Okay.
Which means it's some white guy in power that owns a team name with that. And I say that as a fan of the Chicago Blackhawks. So I understand that there's a level of hypocrisy that's going there. So, if anything, there's a lot of backpedaling, and you could hear this out beep, 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 going on as they try to recover from the fact of, like, oh shit, people be woke. We shouldn't have an Indian head for our symbol. Now, thankfully, some people are better at it than others, as you were saying. Chicago Blackhawks are really good about it. They have a lot of approval and a lot of thumbs up, as long as they stay within certain bounds of
respectfulness.
Of being respectful. Hey, glad that you recognize us as a people. We're not mascots, but you don't have some 19-year-old kid dressed up in an Indian headdress marching around on a field like the Fighting Illini had for a long time. Mm-hmm. You have some tribes like the Seminoles in Florida that will come together and say, no, we approve of this. We are happy that we're, I mean, in a sad way, you could say, as a dying people, we're glad that you guys will remember us in some way. But then you have teams like the Redskins that use an obviously derogatory term
right
as their team and then fight it tooth and nail and go, oh, no, it's just the way we always have it, which is the most whitest of excuses that you could have. Oh, it's just always been that way, so why can't we keep it that way? Or worse, you have teams like the Cleveland Indians that literally use the most caricature of caricatures to the point where they even name him Chief Wahoo to be your mascot.
Right.
Like, we're past that.
So to kind of circle it back to the article itself, you have...
I mean, from one Indian to another, continue.
Obviously, you have a character that's been portrayed for a generation.
More than
you're talking 30 years of having one individual voice this character in a very distinct cultural way. Or I shouldn't even say cultural, but a perceived cultural way.
Yeah, it is a stereotype. And I don't think it was, I don't want to say it's malicious. I don't think it was malicious to begin with. Because Apu's not a dumb character.
No. However,
using the accent.
The Simpsons fought it for, the creators fought it for at least a year to 2 years. Even going as far as in an episode... literally saying, well, now it's not okay because people are essentially woke, and then screen panning towards a shot of Apu that says Cowabunga Man or whatever.
Don't have a cow.
Don't have a cow.
Or not have a cow or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
But it clearly makes a religious reference on
it's just like, don't do something for 30 years and think that it's, after a while, it's still going to be culturally appropriate. You have to we have to evolve. We've had literal conversations.
We're going back to this one. I'm thinking about it now.
Episodes where comedy has to evolve. We can't always stay farting dick jokes.
Farkin,
are always funny, but you have to evolve past punching down. And I think that's a lot of what this is saying is we're done punching down. Let's evolve as a show and find other ways to be comics and comedians and a funny comedy show.
Now, if they tone down the thickness of the accent or so if they had an Indian American who had a similar accent naturally, and had him voice Apu,
I still think it's inappropriate.
Even if that's his voice.
Even if it's his voice, I still think it's culturally insensitive.
And that's where it gets to the borderline of when does it, and obviously I'm playing devil's advocate here
right,
a little bit just to get something. But at what point do you draw that line between it's not a stereotype, it is his voice, versus... Because obviously, I would think that if they got an actual Indian American to voice it, the accent wouldn't be that thick. Or at least they would make a point to make sure the accent, and obviously the accent is comical. It's clearly, It's not to make fun, but it is to make fun.
I think the comedian that did the documentary itself also goes to say he would like to have seen something happen with Apu that maybe transition him from this slapstick character, this two-dimensional character, to something that evolves past that. So maybe, even though nobody in that world ages ever, because Bart and Lisa have been in the
Maggie's
same class.
been like Maggie even shot somebody and she's still
but who knows, Apu's nephew might come in and he's completely here we go. Oh no, drink. You have somebody that's been grown up in America come and take Apu's place. So and
Apu's son takes over and he's
or nephew takes over. Exactly.
I can see that.
So, but something it still stays within the family, but it stops being culturally insensitive. I think we've beaten this to death. Let's move on to our next article.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm very curious to see where they go with that. There's a lot of slippery slopes, and at the same time, you have to wage what does the audience want, what do you want to do, how do you make it work. Oof. I do not envy them to be in that situation because obviously you don't want to punch down. Obviously you want to get somebody to do a good job or do something with the character. At the same time, the entirety of The Simpsons show is kind of a joke in many ways. So where's the line between what is being made fun of, what isn't being made fun of, what is laughing at oneself? That's going to be a tricky situation.
I just want to I really picked this article just because I want to applaud Hank Azaria for realizing that
it's not cool.
It's time to move on. It's time to grow as a actor, and a paycheck aside, but just to be like, I don't want to be the result of a continued old, young, new, whatever, to continue to feel like they're the butt of a joke.
I 100% agree. That's more editing for me, you realize that. Congratulations to the 2020 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which includes the Doobie Brothers, Whitney Houston, Depeche Mode, T-Rex, the Notorious B.I.G., and 9 Inch Nails. However, not to sound like the little bitter man that I often could seem, one name has not on the ballot, and that's the Dave Matthews Band. Even though they received over 1 million votes in the Hall of Fame fan ballot vote. Bear in mind that this fan vote was created in 2012 when the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame made the PR move to endear itself to the public, who were already very highly skeptical of the institution. It only makes sense to say, your favorite isn't in, well, vote for them and we'll change it. So for 7 years, that formula worked in their favor until this year, when Dave Matthews Band was the clear winner and they were still not nominated. So where does this put the Hall? I mean, you put Dave Matthews Band on the ballot, and next year you repeat the same scenario? Do you leave them off the ballot and do this whole, like, maybe the public has a short memory and they run the risk of the headlines finally stating in, like, 2030, Dave Matthews Band is back on the ballot despite the fan outcry? What do you think?
So, call me naive to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame shenanigree that's going on.
Shenanigree? All right. Hashtag shenanigree.
So, how did it work before this? Did it just, the fan vote ended up with that nomination getting put on the ballot, or that fan vote on the ballot getting put into the Hall of Fame?
Well, the fan vote thing didn't happen until 2012.
Okay.
So the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame always worked within its own entity, as per any
Masters of the Art stroking other Masters of the Art.
When was the Masters of the Art? It's like a community that went, we're gonna stay, and that's the big thing about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Is, I mean, first off, you have NWA that got in, you have Notorious B.I.G. that's in, so immediately you're already going, what is rock and roll? Okay. Like, what is Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I personally am down for all types of music being in the Hall of Fame. but it is no longer called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Then it's just the Music
Hall of Fame, which I'm okay with.
Okay.
But I'm willing to bet that the original Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was probably by somebody with power and money that went, this is the music we like.
Let's make the music we like grandiose and single.
No, let's put it in. Let's enshrine it in this museum.
Got it.
Which is funny because I can't think of the artist's name now. I'm gonna have to look up this. That was actually critical for the Hall of Fame. That said, once you put music in a museum, it's dead.
Ooh.
So the whole Hall of Fame thing was you have these bigwigs, much like the Academy Awards, where you have these bigwigs that vote on. These should be in what's good and what's not.
Good,
and there's no real, and I even looked it up, there's no real criteria. There's no real criteria for this, which is kind of another reason why I'm annoyed that Dave Matthews didn't make it, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But there's no real criteria in this, so it's a lot of just ego stroking of, yeah, we like this, we like this, we like this. Okay, Notorious B.I.G. will be in. Like, yeah, Notorious B.I.G. was good, but he doesn't have a whole, there's not a body of work there that's beyond what he's got.
Fair. So
a lot of I'm gonna get massacred by rappers now, and I will put Notorious B.I.G. on the top 10 easy, but he gone.
he gone.
So there's what's left is what you have, and as good as he is, I still think there's better than him out there. So there's a lot of, and you're also dealing with something, even with the the Academy Awards in terms of movies, it's very hard to describe. Like, I joke with you, what is your top musics, or what's this and this?
Right.
It's never easy to pick that because music affects you
So my question to you then is the counter to this conversation, because obviously being a fan of the Dave Matthews Band as you are, my counter to that is, do you feel like something like this goes away now? Or not only because of the vote, but I'm just saying, do you feel like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has outlived what it actually originally represented?
We're going back to, and it's fitting that the story comes right after the Apu story, of at what point does its relevancy become outdated? Obviously, they had to have made the changes to include hip-hop and R&B and other genres of music, because there's a level of inclusivity that needs to that needs to happen, because it's a PR move. Like, personally, I'm indifferent about the Hall of Fame. I don't care. It's irrelevant.
You're not picking up the next album that you choose to listen to just because so-and-so got voted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I think to a degree, sports Hall of Fames, I guess, count. And I don't mind music Hall of Fames because it's good to look and understand and to pick I
think one of the criterias of a good Hall of Fame would have been, they gotta be dead. They gotta not be able to produce any more discographies or any more additional music.
But the same thing with a lot of sports Hall of Fames. You have to be out of your sport for 20 years or something like that. And Brian Urlacher, Chicago Bears, got in first round after he retired. Which was, again, we're old. It's already 2020. So I think it's 10 years or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, either way, you have to be retired for so many years. There's no hiccups. There's no real criteria when it comes to Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I'm digressing a bit, but to get back to the focus of it. So the issue that they're running into here is that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is allowing all kinds of music in, which is good. Diversity, yay. But what do you do in this particular situation where the fans outcried and went, Dave Matthews Band should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Whether they believe that he deserves to be in it or not is up for debate. I am a rabid, and I'm sure from your point of view, you could see the album sitting on my wall in a frame.
Right.
That I'm a Dave Matthews fan. So even I can sit and say, I see why yes and why no.
So give me a brief rundown of why no.
Why no? It's a little harder on the why no. He does not have that many fans.
I find that hard to believe since he's been touring successfully for how many years?
But the trick about him is the fans that he have are ravenous. They're aggressive fans.
So it's like Fish or any other.
You're just naming jam bands now.
Yeah, I guess I am at that point.
But I mean, I don't
know. Do you call Deadheads a jam band?
100%.
Okay.
Grateful Dead is 100% a jam band.
Okay.
Dave Matthews Band is 100% a jam band. Fish is 100% a jam band. Nothing wrong with being a jam band. The thing about jam bands is you got to have skill. Individual instrumentalists have skill.
Okay.
Sometimes it could be boring because they're busy flaunting their skill, and I don't know how many people want to listen to a clarinet solo for 4 minutes, but it exists. Sorry, clarinet players out there, but just saying. So that's one of the downsides. Now, where's the nose? I mean, obviously, you don't hear a whole lot of Dave Matthews Band songs on the radio. So there's a level of mainstream popularity.
That you realize are Dave Matthews Band
You'll
songs.
hear Crash all the time because that's been played into the ground. You'll hear... What are the ones you hear on radio? I don't hear a whole lot of radio.
Every Day.
That was kind of an album.
I'm just saying, those are songs that you
But you
hear
named two.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Okay. I could probably name more that I've actually heard on the radio
It's fine.
that I just don't realize are Dave Matthews Band songs, at least until I started listening more to their actual
how could you not pick out that voice?
The same reason why I ended up at a... what is his name? I can't even think of him. The beach white wife beater hat.
Kenny Chesney?
Yeah, that's how I didn't know I knew so many Kenny Chesney songs until I ended up at a concert.
Nah, they're a little bit more ancillary because you do have the country music scene that will support itself, regardless if they want to put a boot in brown people's ass or or other nonsense like that. In fairness, I do like some country music as well. There's some that just get so placating. Anyway, we're going way off the trail here. Ultimately, do I think Dave Matthews Band deserves to be recognized as a rock and roll squad? No. I think they have more talent than a lot of individual talent than a lot of rock and rollers. And when you have other genres that don't fall into your rock and roll group,
criteria.
Again, Notorious B.I.G., Nine Inch Nails. I love Nine Inch Nails. Nine Inch Nails is fantastic. I wouldn't consider Nine Inch Nails rock and roll. So those who debate that and go, oh, it's only rock and roll, yeah, keep dreaming. However, the question is what are you...
Right. No, I get it.
What are you looking at? So obviously, I'm a little salty that Dave Matthews didn't get in. Now, admittedly, they interviewed Dave, and he even said, I don't think we deserve to be in. Maybe it's humility speaking. Maybe it's just his own mentality of, dude, this is what I like to do.
Like,
and I play music.
The rest of you.
And Dave Matthews have always operated on that level of,
right.
We play music, we travel, we do live festivals, we do a lot of live music. Everybody likes doing the whole dumped poop in Chicago incident, which still drives me up a wall. Like, it wasn't his bus. It wasn't him that dumped it. He wasn't standing on top of the bus going, bah, ha, 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 poop on Chicago. That said, like, they're still a young band in a way. Like, they've been around for 20...
I mean, he's not walking out on stage in a walker, if that's what you're talking about.
But he's still high action. He's still high energy. He's still getting new fans. He's still releasing stuff. He's still touring every year. I think they're on their 26th or 27th year, consecutive year of summer tours and stuff. So, I like them. And I'm obviously very biased in here. And I guess I ask anybody who's not a Dave Matthews Band fan to maybe give me a reason why. Why wouldn't they be in? Is it because of the hits that they have on the radio? Okay. They still went multi-platinum several times. Is it because of their live performances? I mean, they sell out everywhere they go and they do multiple tours worldwide. So what categorizes a band deserving of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And in a way, it's almost fitting that Dave didn't get in this year because it's more evident that people don't give a crap about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They have nothing behind them. Nobody cares. They have showed their hand by doing a fan vote, the fans voting, and them not respecting that fan vote.
Right.
To say that they're an irrelevant institution anyway. And that ends this week's news. News.
So let's go into Adventure Awaits.
Adventure awaits!
So to piggyback off of the end of our news, we're gonna talk about our trip to Skeleton Key Brewery.
Quickly becoming one of my favorite breweries.
It's conveniently close.
One of my favorite breweries.
And this past week, they happened to do a dual release with a soon up-and-coming restaurant in Downers Grove.
Restaurant, brewery, hybrid thing, sort of.
Brunch, lunch, dinner thing. That's going to be called... What, Red?
Foxtails.
The Foxtail.
I am a sucker for anything fox-related. So, boom. I got like 6 coasters now or something.
Exactly. And they decided to, with the dual release of this restaurant opening and basically a collaboration with a company called Cadence Kitchen & Co., was a 9-tail lager that they released. And it happened to be opening and releasing the kegs or releasing the first tastes of it a couple of Fridays ago. And we decided to go and check it out because, again, we're sucker for anything with a fox related. And I was pleasantly surprised by easy drinking lager. It wasn't anything too special. It was something that you could definitely drink several of. That I feel is the reason why they did it was because it is pretty much consumable by lots of palates.
It's an American lager, so it's akin to your Pilsners and a lot of other like Coors, Miller, everything else. It's very clean and simple, which means that if you're at a restaurant place and got a plate of tacos or a burger or fish and chips or something, you will finish 2 of those and be like, what just happened?
Right.
It's
you're not going to notice.
Clean and easy drinking. I killed the first one and went, nope, I need to switch because I could just sit here and drink this all damn night and I'm the driver. So
right.
I'm done here.
So I bring this Adventure Awaits up because we have gone to a lot of different bars or breweries over the last several months. But this nice. I like that one. This evening,
well,
I guess.
no, you've been drinking a bit this evening.
This specific trip was a little interesting because this was the first time, especially at this place, this location that we've gone to a handful of times at this point, we sat at the bar. And tell me what your theory about sitting at a bar is, Red.
So my theory was, and I had to ask a couple people, and to you listeners, I posed this question. If you're in a brewery or at a bar, you're at a location that's serving drinks, your conversations are generally your own, correct? Generally speaking.
Yeah.
I am one to believe that if you're sitting at the bar itself, where you are, there's 6 inches of wood. Now, if there's like a foot of wood between you and the bartender, any conversation that happens at that bar is fair game.
Now, I have a caveat and a question for you. And this is where I kind of wanted to spark this conversation from. Now, is that me and you sitting at a bar having a conversation and the bartender has open right to...
Anybody.
Okay, see, that's where I disagree with you.
Then we shouldn't be sitting at the bar. Because by default, the bar itself has you sitting facing towards the goods, toward the bar, toward the bartender. You are, unless you're swiveling your seat toward the person you're talking to, even then, I think it is
Is it the right of the bartender to be? So here's my caveat toward you is you and I are talking, and you've talked about it before when our episode on Victor Bar, where people, if they lowered their voices, they might have gotten their conversation picked up on.
Sure.
But say we're not doing that. We're sitting at the bar. We're obviously talking, just you and I. The bartender decides to pick up on the conversation and put in his 2 cents. Then does the conversation become open to the rest of the bar patrons sitting at the bar? Or is it, if we bar the, because we did talk about it, we asked a question of the bartender.
Irrelevant.
And then it becomes open to the bar.
Irrelevant. Any conversations had at the bar
are open to free range of anybody at the bar.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Because you are, when you're sitting at a table, everyone's your back is toward the rest of the establishment, and you're in the circular table or square table speaking to your crew, your people, whatnot. When you're sitting at a bar, even if you swivel your seat, by default, you're facing forward, which is open to the back of the bar. It could just be my theory, and that's fine. But I treat it as anything that I'm going to say at the bar itself. Not in the bar, not the building the bar, but at the physical drink bar itself. Your conversations are fair game. So it could cause interesting conversations if you're overhearing and we've done that. Like when we were sitting at the bar, I interjected on some conversations and I sparked some conversations and started just kind of getting, as you would say, in my element and kind of, getting people to think and or getting people to be social, because at a bar, it is a key point to be sociable with each other, with the bartender, which in of itself is I don't want to say a matchmaker, but is a conversation funnel himself. I think a good bartender will take a small conversation and bring it to the attention of others. And obviously, if it's like, hey, I think I slept with so-and-so's wife. Oh, maybe we shouldn't keep this. Hey, yo, Jim slept with... Like, you don't want to do that. But I think a good bartender will listen to... So
there's notes for for our listeners. Don't talk about sleeping with people while you're sitting at a bar, I guess.
Unless you're at a private booth or a private table, sure. But if you're a bartender, I think that you have every right that any conversation happens there. And you have to obviously make some judgment calls, but if a good conversation comes up, to bring it up to the rest of the patrons, to instigate conversation, to instigate thought. Because thought becomes very interesting after a couple of drinks.
Right. And I would comment on the 2 bartenders that we had that night were very good about kind of bringing that conversation and bringing more people's opinions into thoughts and ideas and just discussions in general. I would personally agree with the fact that one of the bartenders brought up the fact that the individual to 2 seats to your left, I think, was one of the game masters that ran their D&D bar theme. Again, we've talked about it. A lot of breweries have themes, and the Skeleton Key at one point hosted a game night. And this individual sitting to our left, which was obviously a regular patron, they had their flight canceled. They had their flight canceled
because this is during Friday night. There's a big snowstorm in Chicago,
and they brought their dinner in because again it was a bring your own food type of location. They brought their dinner in. They saddled up to the bar. We moved a couple spots over so that they could sit down, and homegirl had her basically her hoodie on. That was the Skeleton Key hoodie. Mm-hmm. And you could tell they were regulars. So they were talking up the bartender, hey, how's the kids? How's the family kind of thing. And then because we were talking about obviously the podcast.
Well, I shamelessly drew on a business card. Like I am very shameless about advertising ourselves
when we're in certain locations.
No, that in all locations. Like I carry business cards with me almost all the time. I mean, I guess gotta, but I'm very I'm shameless about it, but I'm also proud of our show. So
fair.
Continue.
So that was good on that bartender to be like, oh, that's what you guys are into? Well, so-and-so here happened to host it. And then we engaged with him in a conversation.
They
and
knew
it was
what THACO was.
He did. And I engaged in my typical interview type questions of like, when did you get into gaming? What did you feel getting into gaming brought you? Like, and he kind of talked about it was, I started at such and such age and then I transitioned out of it because it wasn't quote unquote cool. And then I got to be older and went, no, I'm going to do this. No, I'm going to be a gamer, whatever. So it engaged 2 people or 4 people at that point in a conversation that would have never have happened had those 4 individuals be sitting at a bar versus us sitting at a table or them sitting at a table and vice versa. The other bartender also did a really good job of kind of interjecting when we were having conversations and asking us questions.
Which is the, I guess, point or the distilled distilled a moment of this particular topic was he was listening to other people and listening to a number, because there was 4 groups total. There was a group to our right, there's 2 to our right, you and I, 2 to our left who are friends with the group further to their left.
Yes.
And that group was 4, and then the canceled flight folks came in, and there were 2 more. It was you and I, and then 2 more. So it was a fairly sizable number. Then there's a couple people at the chair.
I mean, it was a full bar at a brewery, which isn't really
the bar was
that
packed.
big.
There's a couple people playing games in the side room, in the air quote family room, I guess you'd call it or something. But I guess to distill this down was the question that was kind of presented.
Which was, and I posted it actually on my own personal page. How
dare you?
I know. Was if you could see any artist and any time within that artist's popularity.
Musician.
Because
people took it out of context.
Well, I didn't specify it. So I don't necessarily disagree with how some of the individuals that responded took it. But if you could see, it was originally ported as a question about music. If you could see any artist, musical artist, at any point in their popularity, who and when would you want to see them? And I was blown away by that question. That is a really good question for music fans or anybody that would love to see somebody that's popular in their prime.
And that question kind of spurred out of a conversation moments beforehand of talking about top albums. Because we were talking about what would be like, your top... Well, somebody's like, what are your top 3 albums? I'm like, whoa, give them a little leeway with top 5 or at least top 10. Because, again, I am of the belief that your music choice is going to change not only with age, but with emotion.
Where you're at in your life.
Where you're at in your life. You're down in the dumps and you're not feeling well, one album may speak to you more than another. If life is good and everything's going great and you're pursuing things, another album is going to speak. However, you're still going to have a constant
go-to.
You're going to have 10 albums that you're just like, this is my jam. But then you're going to have your Mount Rushmore of 4 that may or may not swap in and out at the time. So while you have your top 3 or 4, you're really going to be picking from a pool of your top 10. So that's where that conversation originated from of, okay, what's this? And then, the bartender just looked and was like, so if you could go through any point in time and go see a concert of your favorite artist, what would it be and what time period? Dusty White, have you come up with an answer to that question yet?
So before I answer that, I only want to segue to a statement that has resonated with me over the last several years. And I've kind of posted it periodically over those time periods, where a statement where it says, when you're happy, you're listening to the music, and when you're not happy, you're listening to the lyrics. And that kind of like I said, it resonates with me because there are albums that I can listen to at any point in my life and I enjoy that album for what it is. And then there's points in my life where I'm low or I'm down or I'm upset or stuff just isn't going right. And then that album or that song from that album comes on and I listen to the lyrics and I'm taken back or taken away with more lyrics that I didn't understand before or I wouldn't have thought of before.
Or an altered meaning into the lyrics.
Correct. So hands down, go ahead.
I would say, so before we go to the album, to the concert and time period, so you got a pool of 10 of your favorite albums. A big old mess of 10.
Okay.
Give me 3.
The 3 are definitely easier for me because we also ended up having a conversation with the bartender that greatest hits albums don't count, and I still disagree with that. But
I will disagree with you on that one still. Like, you can't, because I know you want to use Garth Brooks' The Hits, which is not fair because there's a difference between an album being created for, and I want to say this too because it's like for people to listen, like,
caveats for those that want to play along and name their albums.
The home game, the Grey Muzzle Geekery Music home game. There's a difference between an album that is created specifically with the hits, like Garth Brooks' The Hits, that is clearly an album that takes a bunch of hits and throws them together, compared to, I don't know, Fleetwood Mac, that has just a lot of hits on that album.
Fair.
It wasn't meant to be a greatest hits. It just happened to come out to be
every one of those
just about
songs
every one of those
hit.
songs became a hit. So you have to look at the difference between what is an album that was made post and what is an album that just hit.
Okay. So to segue into this part of the conversation, my three albums, my top would be
of 10.
My
so
top
it fluctuates,
3,
but your top 3.
But my guaranteed top 3 would always be Matchbox 20, the original.
For you or someone like yourself.
Correct.
Oh, I know I'm correct. I'm helping you.
Thank you, because I'm really bad at album names, but I can name the artists. Mm-hmm. The second would be, I would probably say in my top 3, I don't know if it would be second, but would be Fall Out Boy.
Ugh, continue.
I know.
No judgment.
You dislike Fallout, but it's still from Fallen from a Cork Tree or Fall from a Cork Tree.
Yeah.
Whichever one's got Cork Tree in it is probably my second. And then, oh man, that third album. I know I had it the night of when I was talking, and now I can't.
And clearly, it's not in your list.
I can't put it together here. Probably, actually, no, I'm sorry. Alanis Morissette, Jagged Little Pill.
Jagged Little Pill is definitely in my top 10 for sure. It's an interesting album, but it's like a really formative album for me, without a doubt.
So, yeah, those would probably be my top 3 that I could listen to at any point.
You're such a 90s kid.
I am. Which is funny because all through the 90s or into the early 2000s, I really thought of myself as an 80s kid, that I was born in the wrong genre because I loved 80s movies. I loved 80s soundtracks, like give me Top Gun any given day. But in fairness,
you didn't get to listen and or watch those movies until there were reruns.
Right.
Like you did not see Top Gun in theaters.
That was my original time. Now that I think about it, was No Doubt, Tragic Kingdom.
Oh, that
was a good one too.
So that's in the top 10 as well. I mean, again, that's why I don't say like, oh, you need to give them to me in order, because I do have a grace, like a level of grace or a level of leeway of at 1 minute this album could fall from your top 3 and just be in number 4,
right?
Or slip from 2 to 3, and then that means your 3 needs to drop 2 or something. So that's why I like going, here's your top 10. Here's your pool of 10. Pick 3 of them. They don't have to be number 1. You could pick number 10.
Right.
But I know that that's in that 10.
So what about you?
But I mean, obviously number 1, and it's on my wall currently, is Dave Matthews Band, Crash.
Okay.
That is a super formative album for me, simply because at the time I was listening to literally nothing but country and Elvis. Like, that's how my folks raised me.
Right.
I listened to country music and Elvis Presley.
Which is why I had Greatest Hits as mine, is because I was the first
But
CD
Greatest
I
Hits,
bought.
and I get it. Greatest Hits is still one of your favorite CDs, but it doesn't count as a standalone album.
I get it. I understand.
That said, that's probably in one of my tops as well, because I listened to the crap out of the Garth Brooks Greatest Hits, his face half with the American flag, the black background.
It was the first CD I've ever bought.
No, my first CD I ever bought was Super Rough and Racist, so I feel kind of bad about that.
Now it's Super Rough and Racist.
I mean, now
you
it is.
didn't know it at the time.
I saved up and spent $100, which in 1994, 5, I think it's 95. No, 96. I bought it in 96 because Dave Matthews Crash came out. In 96, I bought the Ace of Base album. Yeah, I bought that CD, and I saw the sign, and it opened up my eyes. I saw the sign, and so anyway, Dave Matthews Band, Crash, definitely, probably just number one. Period. Like, I don't think that's ever changing. That's one of my
Matchbox will never change.
Yeah, that's free. I can't say number 2, but like in my top 10 pool, Stevie Wonder and the Key of Life. Like, something about that album, and I went through enough tragedy in my life where that album spoke to me on a number of levels, because it sings of pain, it sings of loss, it sings of love, it sings of just, I mean, yeah, go get educated,
the human
everyone.
Spectrum.
It is a human spectrum. Stevie Wonder is so damn good. I don't care about the memes or the jokes or whatever else you want to say. Like, Stevie Wonder is so good. Like, his voice and the passion he puts behind it. Stevie Wonder, I love you, man. Let's see, a third album for me. I mean, Matchbox 20 is up there. The same album as you. Think of a couple Oasis albums. I might go on a limb and I'm like a little bit too with you now. It's hard when you look at it and you go, okay, what would be your guarantee choices? I mean,
I just want you to feel yourself that moment walking down the street, having those awful headphones on, your skip reducing Walkman.
And you're holding it like a pizza? So you're afraid to do anything?
While you're huddled in your starter jacket, what's that CD in your skip reducing Walkman?
I mean, oh man. Oasis, what's the story Morning Glory?
Okay.
That's still, it's a good album. I mean, good, but again, another album that was super 90s. Hello.
Right.
Super formative for me. Super, like, again, as somebody who grew up on country and Elvis. And I love Elvis, don't get me wrong. I like country music too. Like, some of the stuff is good. But for someone who has experienced that and oldies, like I know Dion and Four Tops and stuff, but when you go from that and you start touching into Pearl Jam and all those 90s musics that are so different from even 80s stuff, it blew my mind. I was like, oh my goodness, there's a whole other world. And then at that point I got lucky and grew up in the age of the internet as it was budding, and I was willing to wait 3 days to download a single song
on LimeWire,
or whatever you could find. But it still took. You're downloading it, kilobytes a minute. But I'd wait and get this new song and be entrapped in it, and like, holy cow! Now we've got streaming services and everything else that allows you to listen to a whole album in seconds.
Right.
Not the whole album in seconds. To obtain the whole album in seconds and then listen through it in full. I was just thinking of what it would take to listen to a whole album in seconds. Done. But yeah, so I think that I would go with that currently, and it's subject to change. Like I said, it's in my 10. So Crash, Songs the Key of Life, and What's a Story Morning Glory.
Okay.
Gives you an idea of my hopeless romantic side that has died so long ago. Well, I guess, I mean, if you guys want to send us a message or something, obviously you can find us on Discord. You could find us on Twitter, and you could find us directly at our Gmail account. And yeah,
Facebook, Instagram,
whatever you want to do, drop us a line. Let us know what would be your, again, not top 3, but if you're going to reach into the barrel.
If you were stranded on a desert island.
Oh, wait, before we get to there, we never said what year and what artist and year would you go see?
Oh.
The point of this conversation that we glossed with some bourbon.
So for me, it would probably be, I know that night I definitely said Prince in late 80s.
Ooh, go see Prince live?
Prince live, 80s. Yeah, I think that would be formative. Looking back on it and going, even though Prince would be really cool to see in the late 80s because of how popular he became and how many of those, again, songs just became hit after hit after hit, I probably honestly would love to see the Beatles and the transition from
so when you want to see
craziness, like from their, like, don't get me wrong, I want to hold your hand and help and all those things, very easily songs to sing and perform. But that slight transition, like right before they get into what we talked to about at the bar, there's some artists you can't see live. They kind of suck live. You wouldn't be able to see Beach Boys doing pet sounds live because it's not something that's reproducible on a stage.
Sure.
So you would have to go with something that is more on that cusp for me, for Beatles, before they get really weird with hair and all that weird stuff in the late 70s, early 80s. But something on that cusp would be Choice.
Choice. And I've shamelessly announced it several times of mid-1990, 1995, Dave Matthews Band live at Red Rocks. Like, it is on my bucket list. That is 100% on my bucket list is to, I don't know if, I mean, ideally I would like to see Dave Matthews Band at Red Rocks at some point, but I think I'm willing and a product of modern generation to kind of scale back my dreams a little bit and go, no, this is what I'd be able to do. I would like to see almost any band, ideally Dave Matthews Band. Mumford & Sons would be really freaking good,
and
too.
It's ironic that you specifically talk about Red Rocks because our previous competition host, Brian Ibbett, often sees musicians at Red Rocks because he's right there in Colorado.
Yeah, I may very well give my left testicle to go see Dave Matthews Band live at Red Rocks, to go to Red Rocks Amphitheater in Colorado go look up the pictures. Go Google the pictures right now. Stop the podcast.
Isn't an album by itself?
Live at Red Rocks. Yeah. It is actually an album that was recorded, because that's the thing about Dave Matthews is he's got like 10, 11, 9, I can't remember, studio albums. But he's got like 50-something live tracks, or 60-something live tracks that he records live, because he's a live band. Like, and I will say it every single day. His studio stuff is okay. You have to see him live. They're a live band. They sound fantastic live. He plays in Red Rocks regularly, and the stadium, the amphitheater itself is so beautiful with the sunset and the natural acoustics, and just
exactly.
It's banging. So I mean, again, we would like to hear what would be a band if you're reaching into the barrel of music and you want to pull one of your top 10 out. Well, and it doesn't have to be your number one, but what would be a top 10 band for you, and a band and album? And if you really want to go to bonus round, if you want to play along with us, what would be the band that you would go see, or individual, doesn't have to be a full band, what would be the show you would go see in what time period, and hell, let's go for money. Where would you go see him? A homecoming? I mean, seeing Prince returning home to Minnesota would probably be a crazy show.
Right.
Dave Matthews Band returning to South Carolina would probably be a really good show. So you have these homecoming shows that might be above and beyond.
Fall Out Boy in Chicago.
Or maybe you want to see them in a specific state where it's a small private venue, kind of hidden, only 100 seats or something.
Or even if that's not something you choose to want to answer, or you don't really think you got an answer to that, just tell us what your favorite concert you've ever seen is.
Ooh, that'd be really good. Do you have before we close out for tonight, one of your favorites?
I luckily, because of my very close and dear friend, and I love her to the end of days for this, I did finally get to see Matchbox 20 live. It was... I know it's a really famous theater in the area, but I don't know what the name is. It's got lawn seats.
New World Amphitheater or the Tweeter Center or the First Midwest Bank or whatever it's called?
Something close to Indiana or outside of Indiana. I know it's. I don't know.
I thought it was at the New World.
I mean, it might have been.
It's in Tinley Park. I thought.
But yeah, I got to see Matchbox 20, and man, I'm just such a huge fan, though. So, like, all of the songs they did were, yes, I wanted to see this song. So it was just like...
Well, you saw them fairly recently, so they're already...
I think in the last 3 years, 2 years.
A little more than that. But still, they were, at that point, they're playing their hits.
Oh, yeah.
They're not, like, touring their new album.
But even Rob Thomas was doing some of his own hits because he's a prolific artist by himself. Sure. So it really hit the spot, and it opened, and Counting Crows opened for them. So,
which is so 90s-tastic.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it really, hands down, would have been for a very long time, would have been one of my bucket lists. So I did get to cross that out. So
I think for me, it pains me almost to say that it actually wasn't a Dave Matthews Band that I saw. I've seen Dave like 14 times now. Yeah, you heard me, 14 times. But I think one of the most unique or coolest concerts I've seen, and I'm actually kind of embarrassed, was actually a Bon Jovi concert in Milwaukee with Goo Goo Dolls opening for them.
Okay.
It was also John Bon Jovi's birthday. So Goo Goo Dolls came out, did their thing. Bon Jovi came out, did their thing, and this is right when Misunderstood came out.
Okay.
So that album just came out. And then, they came out and did their encore. And then they went back. Then the house lights came on. And people started to leave. And then they came out with Goo Goo Dolls. Like, Bon Jovi and Goo Goo Dolls came out. The people who stayed behind sang Happy Birthday to John Bon Jovi. And then they played like 3 oldies. They played Twist and Shout, they played Shout, and then they played something else. But they just did
just goofing around.
Like the janitors and the cleaning crew were cleaning the benches, and everything was it was almost like an acoustic show because a lot of people already left. The house lights were on, and they're still on stage just playing, and just as much as I love Dave and all my stuff, seeing that happen
was unique.
Was super unique and something I'm super thankful for. So yeah, that was probably my coolest concert experience. So anyway, we'd like to hear about your adventures. So be sure to share with us on Twitter, on Facebook. Send us a message on Discord. We're super active on Discord. Join us on Discord and talk to us. I'm lonely. Talk to me. Anyway, so let's leave this out as we always do, and remember that we are all geeks. And to be otherwise may very well mean to live without passion. Y'all have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Gray Muzzle Geekery with Dusty Red and Dusty White.
You can support our continued geekery at our Patreon website, patreon.com/graymuzzlegeekery. Be sure to check back often as we start to add geek cred levels.
You can send your questions and comments to us at graymuzzlegeekery@gmail.com or find us on Twitter at graymuzzlegeek.
We can be found on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and Buzzsprout.
And a special thank you to Pepper Coyote for our intro theme. And if you like what you heard, you can find more of his stuff on Spotify, Patreon, or directly from his Bandcamp page.